As New Orleans Saints training camp ramps back up, big performances by the offensive line will help to improve their outlook in 2024. We're diving into what we're hoping to see as New Orleans Saints camp kicks back off. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network on SI, at least through the rest of the weekend. I'm going to have some new news coming up for you later on this week, but for now, we'll keep it at that. We appreciate you very much, as always, for joining us for another episode. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, Marquez Callaway is back. We'll take a look at that, as well as some injury progress that we're hoping to see this week. We're going to specifically take a look at Marshon Lattimore and Demario Davis, the injury progress we're hoping to see there, and what else we're hoping to see from that position. And we're going to lead everything off with the offensive line, who can really, really impact its outlook with great performances over the course of the next 4 days before the next day off on Tuesday. We got all that and much more coming up for you on today's episode. And we appreciate you very much for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's episode of Locked On Saints, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, where it is making every moment more, making sure that you've got something all summer long over at FanDuel when it comes to your favorite sports. They're giving you a free boost or bonus all summer long. That means there's something for everyone every day throughout the summer. So make sure you're going to check it out over at FanDuel.com. That's where you're going to want to go to get started. For me, the offensive line has the biggest opportunity over the course of the next few days to impact its early outlook. I don't think that it's going to change anything in terms of making people feel very comfortable for the 18 full weeks, the 17 full games or anything like that. But that's okay. That's not the goal here. The goal is simply to show, okay, got some padded practices under your belt, got a day off to make some of those adjustments, get your body right a little bit, get your mind right a little bit, and then get back out on the field. The Saints have 2 padded practices here. One today, one tomorrow on Saturday. Then they go back to shirts and shells once they get into Sunday and Monday before the day off. And so this next couple of days in pads could be big for the New Orleans Saints offensive line that effectively got taken a task over the course of the last couple of days, including a day where Eric McCoy got a vet rest day. Lucas Patrick moved over to center from left guard. Aliudo was in at left guard, all these other things. Like, there were a lot of specificities about what went wrong with the Saints offensive line throughout, Wednesday's practice. But big bounce back opportunity here for Friday and Saturday. And so if they can show that, I think that's going to end up helping out a lot of people that are concerned about this New Orleans Saints offensive line. It's the group that I get the most questions about outside of the individual of Chase Young, which makes perfect sense, don't get me wrong. But it's the group that I get the most questions about. It's the group that everybody wants to hear about. If this offensive line is able to take a step forward over the course of the next couple of days, I think it will help a lot of people to just read some positive reports, and I mean fully positive reports about this New Orleans Saints offensive line. There's been a lot of caveating so far, right? Oh yeah, a couple of good reps here, but then this happened. Or, hey, this, or sometimes you'll hear some things like, hey, the offensive line performed really well today, or Taliese Fuaga performed really well today, but, Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey and Carl Granderson and Chase Young all got into the backfield, and then it feels contradictory, where both those things can happen at the same time throughout training camp, because Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey might be taking snaps against the second and third teams while Chase Young was taking snaps on the opposite side, or maybe Chase Young did beat Taliese Fuaga on one play, but not on several plays. And so therefore both of them looked good and had good moments and things like that. I think that what would really help this offensive line in terms of its outlook outside of the facility would simply be having a strong practice or really pair of practices here as the pads go back on for the next 2 days. So looking forward to seeing if we could see a bit of that. I will tell you straight up, I think Taliese Fuaga has been good, really, really good, very strong. I think Trevor Penning has been not bad, which is what you want to see from him right now. He's learning a new position, so he's got these moments to where things maybe aren't clicking and stuff like that, but that's to be expected right now. He's learning an entirely new position. Left guard depth for me is a big concern. seeing last week where they didn't have Nick Saldiveri, who's out dealing with a calf injury. They didn't have Eric McCoy because of a vet rest day. So they moved Lucas Patrick, who usually goes in place of Nick Saldiveri, over to center. And so they were about their fourth center deep because Shane Lemieux was also out, or they were their fourth left guard deep, because Shane Lemieux was also out. Yeah, things didn't look great there, but that makes sense. So I would feel better about that spot if it is Lucas Patrick in there, if it is Nick Saldiveri in there. So I think that like those three positions, which are the three biggest question marks, it's not all bad, even though it doesn't feel like it's not all positive either. And that's okay for right now. I wanted to take a look at a couple of other things that are kind of on the watch list for this week. So beyond just the offensive line, I want to see Chase Young continue to stand out and make big plays. Chase Young feels like he has independently been, over the course of those couple of practices that we've seen so far, the best player on the field for the New Orleans Saints, and it's not very close. He consistently wins his reps. He's consistently disruptive in the run game and in the passing game. He's shown a lot of hustle, a lot of effort. He's shown a lot of reception to coaching, whether that coaching comes from the coaches or is coming from some of the veteran players that are also on the field. He's getting, coached up by Cam Jordan. Carl Granderson is celebrating Chase Young. There was one point to where they have sort of this mesh. It almost looks like a trampoline, but you're not meant to be on it. It's meant to be something soft, but that keeps you at a low level so you can work on low leverage. And so they had set up a bag drill for you to be able to strafe across, or you could imagine like a crab walking sideways, but like you're strafing across and you're trying to stay underneath, you're trying to stay low under this sort of trampoline looking thing. And so as they're doing this, at one point, Chase just runs through it super quick, super easy, super fluid, to the point to where you just heard Carl Granderson basically just exclaim, like, dang, like everything. So you're really feeling a lot of this defensive line building confidence. And I think that's why you're also seeing guys like Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey have strong camps, because it kind of feels like the entire edge group is kind of thriving together. And when I say thriving, I mean personally together. Like they seem like a really good and a connected group this year during training camp. And this is part of the positives of being out of town for training camp, is that everybody's around everybody all the time. I know some position groups that went to dinners together the other night and all this other stuff. Like those things move the needle in terms of building that camaraderie, building sort of the fraternity of it all, and building the togetherness of what you then see translated out on the field. Like it sounds kind of, it sounds very theater of me, but when you get sort of like your troop together like that, and all these people are actually like friends with one another and connected to one another, you're going to perform better. And we see that right now, I think, is what we're seeing from that defensive end group in particular. And I'm not purposely leaving defensive tackles out, because they've made their plays too. Now I just want to see more Chase Young, him go out there, make more plays, and of course stay healthy in the process. Finally, for this segment, before we get to three more things that I'm looking for the rest of this week, wide receiver Mason Tipton, the undrafted free agent rookie out of Yale, has been stellar so far this offseason, so far throughout training camp. And training camp has really been sort of the coming out party. During places like mini camps and OTAs and stuff like that, the performances were not as big as what we're seeing here, not as dynamic as what we're seeing here. Now, remember, we only saw one OTA practice per week, even though they practiced 3 times per week over the course of that stretch. So there might have been things that the organization was seeing that we weren't seeing. But now I just want to see it continue. And more importantly, continue in more ways than just the big dynamic plays downfield. Continue to be able to attack the short to intermediate area, which he has shown. Continue to be able to attack the middle of the field, which he has shown. Continue to show that you can impact and contribute on special teams, which he has begun to show already. So if he can continue to do that, I think that ends up moving the needle. And the Saints desperately need another wide receiver to step up at that position. Could Mason Tipton be the guy to get it done like Willie Snead did as an undrafted free agent rookie many, many years ago? Coming up next, I'm going to dive into more things that we're looking for this week. After the day off, New Orleans Saints getting back out on the field. Marshon Lattimore, Demario Davis, what are the injuries looking like, and what does the position continue to look like behind them? That's what we're going to dive into next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula that wins championships is the same formula that will help you keep your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to be able to level your ride or die up to peak performance. Whether you're looking for superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, exhaust kits, and more. You're going to be able to find it all at ebaymotors.com. And whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 parts and accessories for your number one ride or die. It'll always be easy to find exactly what you're looking for at ebaymotors.com. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, you're going to be able to find everything that you need and get your car leveled up to that MVP level to bring home some big wins with eBay Motors. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay Guarantee Fit available only to U.S. customers. All right, family. Marshon Lattimore, Demario Davis, the two biggest injuries in conversation right now when it comes to the New Orleans Saints. But I will say that the position groups behind them are looking still very strong. We appreciate you very much. As always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Make sure you go and check out the first ever NFL Fast TV 24/7 stream. We're doing some really cool stuff here over at Locked On. You want stories 24/7 about everything going on around the NFL? Head over to the Locked On NFL YouTube page or download the Amazon Fire TV Channels app so you can tune into the 24/7 stream that's bringing you all the biggest stories from around the league all throughout the day from the local experts that know their teams the best. Here is a part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I wanted to mention too earlier, if you are an insider, I did include some offensive line and defensive line film, as well as some one-on-one, as well as some cornerback and wide receiver one-on-one tape in the Insider Drive, which you can gain access to by being an insider. If you're interested in joining, it's 14 days free. Just text HUDAT to 504-285-7473 or click the link in the description. I'm going to be uploading a lot more video from practices because I can't use them in the episodes because A, it doesn't serve the audio side, and then B, it copyright stuff. So I don't want to mess with it. I just don't want to mess with it. So here's a way for you to go and check it out. If you want to become an insider, you can do that. You can also click the link in the description. All right. So let me start with Marshon Lattimore here, because I think that this is the biggest injury, but also the one that we have seen out of the ones that I want to discuss here at this point. It's also the one that I think we've seen the most progress with. So Marshon Lattimore was out on the practice field during Wednesday's practice. He was in a hoodie and shorts, hood up, just watching practice, things like that. Still, seeing him present and on the sideline is progress, okay? Even if he's not running around, even if he's not in uniform or pads or doing drills and things like that. Because he is in the midst of his rehab process, I would be surprised if he saw the field again today or tomorrow, because that might skip a little bit too much of the rehab process to throw him back into padded practices right away. Now, I could be surprised, and I'm willing to be surprised, so we'll see exactly what happens there, but that's my expectation. I wouldn't be shocked to then see him maybe getting a little bit more involved, considering that we still see him over the course of the next couple of days, even off to the side, see him get a little bit more involved once the pads come back off and things kind of ramp back down a little bit in terms of physicality. So we'll see. But seeing that progress for Marshon Lattimore last week was good. He's dealing with that hip flexor injury. Dennis Allen did say that he's in the midst of a rehab process, which does suggest that he's going to miss some time, but it doesn't sound like there's been any indication that that time goes into the regular season, which is fine for a guy like Marshon Lattimore because, look, keep him healthy and then get him out on the field week one. That's the most important part. You don't have a benchmark you have to hit with a Marshon Lattimore before then. He knows the system. He knows what you're doing on defense. He knows what you're going to ask of him, and he's your best corner. You can kind of bubble wrap him, leave him be, and then you don't really got that much to worry about. But I'm curious to see if maybe we see him do some individual drills or something like that after the pads come off in the next couple of days, and then maybe start to see a ramp up in terms of practice involvement at that point. But it's going to be completely dictated on whether or not we continue to see him present over the course of these next padded practices. Just off to the side would be good. So we'll see what happens there. But look, the Saints cornerback room outside of that has looked really strong. We've seen a lot of really good stuff from rookie Kool-Aid McKinstry, who I think has been the best performing rookie so far this offseason. And look, that's because Kool-Aid, you also get to see him impact in special teams and things like that. Taliese Fuaga is not underwhelming or underperforming by any stretch of the imagination, but he also carries the expectations of a first-round pick. So with all the things that Kool-Aid is doing, it's just a little bit more impressive as a guy that dropped out of the first round, and you're still looking at it going, wow, why did this guy drop out of the first round? I get the foot injury, but I mean, goodness, like he's looking really, really good. And he's been performing almost exclusively on the outside, by the way. So him and Paulson Adebo have been holding down the outside corner spots with the first team defense. And when Alontae Taylor comes on, he comes on to go into the nickel. So it seems like they're very comfortable with where Alontae is. I told you last week, I think Alontae is going to be an entirely different player in 2024. I've been very impressed with what I've seen from him so far. I think Paulson Adebo is going to be just as good as he was last year. He's been very impressive so far as well. This is a really, really good cornerback room, 4 corners down. And then there's guys like Shamar Jean-Charles who continue to make plays as well. He hasn't gotten any interceptions so far during camp that I can remember off the top of my head, but he has certainly contributed to knocking some passes up, knocking some passes down, all these other things that have led to some other turnovers. So good stuff from the rest of that cornerback room, but obviously want to see Marshon Lattimore get back out there when he is healthy. Demario Davis, same thing. Hamstring injury that he suffered, I believe it was during the one-on-ones with the running backs, if I remember correctly, on Wednesday morning. And so I expect that they'll be very slow with this and that they'll take their time with this. We see how long Kendre Miller has been out dealing with his hamstring injury. Maybe we see some progress for him with another day off here, coming out of another day off here. But for Demario, I don't think there's any reason to push this, especially because you know how pesky hamstring injuries can be. You don't want this to extend any further into the regular season or anything like that. You want Demario Davis out on the field. So I think they'll take their time with him, but I also know Demario, and I know that Demario heals very quickly. We've seen that him healing impressively fast. He mentioned at one point last year being given less than 0% chance to play in a game, and he played that entire game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him find his way back to the field because he's just different like that. So we'll see what happens with him. But even if he's not out there, I do think that seeing more Pete Werner, more Willie Gay, more Anfernee Orji, who has had a fantastic camp so far, the former undrafted free agent rookie from last year, coming in as a linebacker and has stuck around for another year. He has looked stellar so far. So I think he gives you really good depth. Getting a better look at guys like Monty Rice and Khalid Hudson and Isaiah Stalbert obviously doesn't hurt either. So I think that the Saints are in a really good place at both of these positions to be able to say, okay, take the time with the starters, the guys that are 2 of the 4 most important players on the defense going into 2024, leaving the other 2 being Tyrann Mathieu and Cam Jordan. Let them rest. Let them get better. The rest of this position group on both of these positions is pretty stout, pretty good, pretty solid. So there's no reason to rush these guys back in. Pretty good news for this New Orleans Saints team as they look to manage those injuries. The next thing that I'm curious about, not injury related though, is whether or not more offensive installation will put the offense back on top. We've heard from Dennis Allen before last week saying that, hey, the defense is starting to catch up because they're recognizing a bit of what the offense is doing because only a limited amount of the offense has been installed. So now as we get through the day off with this team, do we see more of the offense being installed and then therefore see the offense come back out on top, particularly in the passing game? I thought that the run game actually looked pretty good on Wednesday. I thought that the pass blocking wasn't great and that didn't allow the passing game to open up outside of a couple of big plays. Derek Carr hooking up with Chris Olave over the middle of the field for a deep pass, play action pass. Spencer Rattler found Mason Tipton down the right sideline again, I believe with Rico Payton in coverage. There was a lot of good stuff that the offense still did, but it was kind of few and far between. It was like one play here, a lot of plays dominated by the defense, then one play here, then a lot of plays dominated by the defense. So do we see the offense now come in with something new, which I think is really exciting because I love seeing all the new things that this offense is doing. And the only thing I'm disappointed that we're not going to see is that the NFL banned the cheat motion or the speed motion, which I was so excited to see this offense finally use because they were using it in training camp. in OTAs and mini camps and things like that. And now the NFL went and banned it. So no fun league, I suppose. So we won't see that, but I am looking forward to seeing more of what this New Orleans Saints offense introduces and how that potentially takes advantage of what this defense is expecting. Because there is something to this practice of setting up tendencies that the defense is now adjusting to. So what does the Saints offense now install that puts the defense back on its heels? It gives you a little bit of it's kind of a nexus in which you can see a little bit of what the game plan ideas could potentially be in terms of how you get defenses off their, on their heels a little bit and off balance a bit. So really looking forward to seeing that over the next couple days as well. All right, coming up next, the return of Marquez Callaway is here. We got that coming for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, where they are making every moment more all summer long. You might feel like sports have stopped sporting, but that's not true. The Olympics are ongoing, the MLB is ongoing, WNBA set to ramp back up. There's so much happening around the world of sports, and FanDuel is keeping you locked in with every bit of it. You can even get ahead on some NFL stuff. The Saints right now favored by 4.5 points. The over-under set for the Saints and Carolina Panthers week 1, 40.5 points, expecting the Saints to win something like 23-18 in this game. You think the Saints can win by more? You think the Saints will win by less or lose? You can bet either way over at FanDuel today. And right now, they're doing something incredible throughout the summer. They are giving all customers a free boost or bonus every day. That's right. That means that there's something new for everyone every day, all summer long. All you have to do is head over to FanDuel.com to get your summer started. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints reuniting with Marquez Callaway, former New Orleans Saints wide receiver. Spent some time in Denver with Sean Payton, now has made his way back here to New Orleans. What does it mean for Marquez Callaway? What does it mean for the Saints? What does it mean about the rest of the wide receiver room? We got that coming up for you and more as we continue our look ahead from what we're hoping for happening over the course of the next few days. Most of that was a sentence. You get the idea. Don't forget, we are your team every day. So coming up later on today, we'll be live after training camp. We'll have another episode for you the next morning as well, making sure that you're all caught up with everything that happens in day 8 of New Orleans Saints training camp. Day 4 of padded practices. I think day 4 of padded practice. So lots of good stuff here on the way. And don't forget as well to go and check out for your second listen today, Locked On NFL Scouting. Get that in-depth look at the NFL from a roster building, team management standpoint. Really, really smart football talk by Kyle and Joe over at Locked On NFL Scouting. Make sure you go and check that out as well. So the New Orleans Saints have re-signed or brought back rather Marquez Callaway, New Orleans Saints wide receiver. He was their leading wide receiver in the 2021 season, which was a 2021 season that wasn't much to write home about. I understand. I know. I do get that. Several quarterbacks had to play in that season, all those other things. It was a weird year, but he was still a leading wide receiver. And this is a guy that came into New Orleans out of Tennessee as an undrafted free agent and did what Mason Tifton is hoping to do. Started to be able to be around during his rookie season and, coming in as an undrafted guy, working his way into an actual big role. Remember, he kind of won that wide receiver role later on. The preseason Jaguars game was the one that you felt like he actually helped Jameis Winston win the quarterback role that offseason, all those other things, a ton of ways that he has effectively contributed over the course of time. He's also been a returner for the team. He's helped out on special teams. He has been a blocker for the team, all those other things. He's a pretty good fit for what it is that the New Orleans Saints were looking for when they went out and grabbed Cedric Wilson as a big-bodied guy that can help in the passing game, but that can also block for you. And right now, with Equanimeous St. Brown dealing with injury, with Cedric Wilson dealing with injury, right now with Bub Means also dealing with injury, the Saints just simply needed to go and find somebody at wide receiver. So they go with somebody that they're familiar with, which I think was a good choice. And so Marquez Callaway is back. Remember, it's Quez, not Marquez, Marquez. And so he will be back with the team. And excited to see him. He always brings a lot of energy. He's always very happy to be out on the field as well. So really excited to see what he's going to bring. And look, I don't usually say this about guys that join teams in August. I'm usually pretty reserved about that. But he's got a real chance because this wide receiver room just hasn't been stellar so far behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, and then leave alone the shining performances that we've seen from Mason Tipton so far. So if he comes in and fits in the system and can block and can catch and is making big plays and is getting some, one-on-one opportunities that he's winning and things like that, then all of a sudden, like, Marquez Callaway enters the chat really, really strongly. So we'll see where things go there. But this really shows you that the Saints, A, are dealing with a lot of injuries at wide receiver, but also B, are looking for other options and starting to try to get a look at other players, because so far, We haven't seen that next wide receiver really rise up from this New Orleans Saints wide receiver room. The Saints did move on from tight end Tommy Hudson, waived/injured, which means he'll probably, if he doesn't get picked up off of waivers, he'll probably revert back to injured reserve for the Saints. He walked off the field with an injury early on Wednesday during individual drills and things like that. So the Saints tight end room is one that we haven't talked about very much. I have seen some impressive stuff from Foster Morrow. I have seen some nice things from Dallin Holker. Still seeing him get coached up in the blocking game and things like that. Still seeing him get coached up on the precision of his route running, but he's still making plays. He's still getting out there with the first team, all that. Michael Jacobson's also contributing there. Jesper Horsted's also contributing there. So all that, and Juwan Johnson has been working off to the side. No timetable in terms of his return as of now, but I think getting Juwan Johnson back will really, really help take this tight end room up a notch, right? Take that step forward for this tight end room. But now they're one more tight end down without Tommy Hudson. So we'll see if that's a position that they look to address at a later time. But look, when they lost Tommy Hudson, they didn't bring in a new tight end. They brought in Marquez Callaway. So unless they're looking at moving Marquez over to tight end, it doesn't seem like they're in a rush to continue to address that position, at least at this time. We're hoping for some hopeful progress on 3 guys this week. Left guard, Nick Saldiveri, defensive tackle, Bryan Bresee, as well as wide receiver, Cedric Wilson. Now, it is a little interesting. Cedric Wilson is on the schedule, which is always tentative, to speak with us later on today. So if he makes it back to practice, then that would make sense. But if he doesn't make it back to practice, then obviously that will change. So we'll see where things go when it comes to him. But you want to see all 3 of these guys get back out on the field as quickly as possible. Left guard is a spot for Lucas Patrick or Nick Saldiveri to win. And it's got to be tough for Nick Saldiveri, who's dealing with another injury, this time a calf injury, when Lucas Patrick goes into that starting lineup and has NFL starting experience and has NFL experience and brings a lot of energy. He celebrates. He's, Ric Flair wooing down the field on big runs and all these other things. He's just an energetic dude, constantly getting to the second level, moves really well, super fluid, and makes sense in the system. Nick Saldiveri does all of that stuff too. Maybe doesn't bring the same level of energy that a Lucas Patrick does just yet, but it's a competition for him. And so he definitely wants to be out there on the field. So we'll see if he gets out there. Bryan Bresee, you just want to see him out there because this is set up to be a big second year for him. Big breakout year after 4.5 sacks his rookie season, which is great from the interior. And so you just want to see him get out there and be healthy. He was limited throughout some of OTAs, mini camp, stuff like that. So it'd just be good to see him back out on the field as he's dealing with that foot injury. And then Cedric Wilson, who's dealing with a groin injury, just seeing him be able to get back out there. He had that one really stellar practice. You'd love to see him build on that at the wide receiver spot, which is just a wide open position group right now where you're going, somebody do something. And so Cedric Wilson obviously would love to take advantage of that opportunity. And especially with new competition arriving in that room with Marquez Callaway, who's familiar with the way that the Saints like to do things, but is going to be, looking at a new offensive coaching staff here, that just drives a little bit more, I assume, that desire to get back out on the field. I'd like to see a day without injury, just one day. Just one day without injury. And I know that the Saints are playing things super cautious, right? Oh, your foot hurts slightly, get off the field. Like that kind of a thing. I get all that. But boy, it sure would be nice just to see one day without somebody walking off with trainers and all those other things. And then finally, I'd like to see the passing game open back up. This kind of goes back to what we were discussing with more offensive installation possibly benefiting the offense here. But I'd just like to see that passing game open back up. It's going to give a lot of opportunity to evaluate a lot more over on the offensive side. When the passing game opens back up, we get a better look at the offensive line. We get a better look at the wide receivers. We get a better look at the tight ends, and we get a better look at the quarterbacks, who I haven't really talked about in this episode because what we expect the quarterbacks to be have been what the quarterbacks have been. Derek Carr looks comfortable. Derek Carr's taking risks. Derek Carr's taking chances. Derek Carr's delivering passes. He's doing what he needs to do. Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener, while the battle hasn't had the fireworks that maybe we expected the fireworks to have, they have not disappointed either. And then Nathan Peterman has gone out there and helped to make some big plays, has helped out with some of the young guys and everything like that as well. So like the quarterbacks are doing what the quarterbacks need to do. And I think that that's exactly the way that it should be, because this offense is going to be about maintaining and coordinating and running its system more than individual heroic effort. And so far, we're seeing guys that are fitting in the system, and that's excellent thus far. So I'd love to see the passing game open back up just so we can continue to evaluate that a bit more. All right, y'all, we appreciate you very much, as always, for being here. Don't forget, we'll be live later on today to the Locked On Saints YouTube page. Audio will release very soon after that as well, so don't worry, you won't miss a beat. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me in the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.